Aircraft carriers, floating airfields capable of launching 90 planes in less than 30 minutes. Self-contained cities, each housing more than 5,000 sailors. Step aboard and feel the exhilaration, the terror,
raise your gear power, attack,
and the camaraderie of life on an aircraft carrier.
I love this place.
So buckle yourself in for the secret world of aircraft carriers. An aircraft carrier has only one mission: launching and retrieving airplanes to protect the interests of her home country.
The carrier is an incredibly intimidating portable weapon, and the highest levels of leadership in the country have always understood that.
When a carrier comes up over the horizon with nearly 70 combat aircraft, even though people on the shore may not see it, you know that their military, their State Departments, their foreign services know we're there.
The United States Navy currently operates 12 massive supercarriers, each featuring a flight deck that spans the length of 4 football fields, a total area of 4.5 acres.
The Nimitz-class carrier is the largest warship in the world. It's heavier than the Titanic was. It's longer than the Empire State Building is tall.
The larger the vessel, the more people required to keep it running.
The ship's crew itself runs about 3,000 people, and you put an air wing on there and all of the staff, and you've got a small town or city of maybe 5,000 or 6,000 people. It's very, very much like a city on the beach, only it moves around.
The supercarrier hauls enough supplies to keep the ship afloat and the crew fed for 24 weeks at a time. Monthly visits by supply ships provide fresh food and additional jet fuel at sea.
The one thing that I did not expect was the size of the ship. I remember seeing the ship from the last deployment pulling into port, and the amazing piece of machinery just pulling in beside the pier was just absolutely incredible. I was totally and completely amazed at what was before me. I kept thinking, what am I getting myself into this time?
Aircraft carriers embark on deployments that can last as long as 8 months. For these young sailors, most of whom are under the age of 20, this may be the first time away from home.
You really don't know what to expect, you know. I've been in the Navy for over 3 years now, but this is the first deployment. I've been on the boat before, but not extended.
Though most crew members are relatively inexperienced, there are always a few veterans around to help teach them the ropes.
This is my 5th deployment, and basically I know what to expect. I know what's expected of me, and I have to look out for these guys that are just going out for their first time. At the beginning, they're going to be lonely, a little depressed because they had to leave their loved ones behind. But as time goes on, it eases, and they're able to focus more on the job at hand.
For now, crew members focus on their final moments with wives, children, family, and friends, contemplating the difficult separation ahead.
We've only been married a year, and I think it gets harder for me every time he leaves because I get so used to having him here, and then before I know it, it's time for him to go again, so it gets harder.
For some, the sadness of departure is mixed with uncertainty about the future.
I'm not sure what it's going to do to the relationship. We'll just have to see whether it's absence makes the heart grow fonder or out of sight, out of mind. We'll figure it out.
It's hard, and it's hard on the young sailors, and we just try to tell them the different ways to cope with that. The best way to cope with it is make sure that your family is solid and that they're well provided for so that you can focus on the job out here and you're not getting bad phone calls from home.
After saying their final goodbyes, crew members are loaded onto a jet that will take them to Jacksonville, Florida, where the USS John F. Kennedy awaits their arrival. carrier is underway, these young men and women must turn their attention to the daily business of assisting as many as 150 flights per day. Having 37-ton planes take off and land in a span of 310 feet creates a work environment fraught with danger.
Well, I think one of the reasons why 18 and 19-year-olds do such a great job on the flight deck is because they know that their lives are in danger. And I think we all wish we could have that kind of power to focus at our work every day, but we don't fear for our lives, and they do for good reason.
Deck workers put their lives on the line every day for an average salary of $887 a month.
It's anywhere from 12 to 14 hours of just straight work, daytime rolling right into the nighttime, and the only time we'll catch a break is when we have to respot the deck for the night work.
When we work days like that, we just got to get our rest wherever we can, when we can. Sometimes it's sleeping on the deck, sleeping on a tractor or L-well or something.
Each flight operation begins with the entire crew walking shoulder to shoulder across the deck in search of any loose debris. When the powerful jet engines fire up, a loose object as small as a dime can be thrown like a bullet across the deck, damaging jets or even killing deck workers. Out here, job responsibilities are identified by the color of your shirt. Yellow shirts direct the movement of the planes on the runway. Blue shirts taxi the planes from the hangar up to the flight deck. Once a plane is in place, it must be immediately secured to the flight deck.
What we do is we tie down the planes with our chains, put the chocks in place around the tires.
Hold on a second. Yo! What do you call me?
It's here in flight deck control that miniature planes are arranged to help the blue shirts plan their every move.
That's why I got to have all these tractors somewhere standing by so I can make it happen.
But if we're going to string out the recovery up there.
To keep planes accessible and battle ready, as many as 22 can be on the flight deck while still leaving room for launches and landings. Green shirts are responsible for maintenance and repair. They also have the terrifying job of working the massive cables and powerful equipment that catch landing planes and catapult them into the sky.
They do the same job over and over and over again. You got 17, 18-year-old, 19-year-old guys banging the launch bar with the heel of their boot into the catapult shoe every time, and they make sure it fits.
Purple shirts, or grapes as they're called, are in charge of fuel. Brown shirts are crew members assigned to a particular aircraft.
All right, thanks a lot, bud. All set. I'll see you.
White shirts are troubleshooters who are always looking for potential problems. They also grade the pilot's performance on each landing.
We oversee the entire evolution for safety so nobody gets hurt. We're like the eyes that keep an eye on everybody else.
Red shirts are responsible for all of the weapons and bombs, which are stored deep inside the bowels of the ship in what's called the bomb vault.
We're on the sixth deck of Weapons Assembly Magazine, and we have 500-pound bombs here, and we also have simulated 500-pound bombs. The bombs basically carry about 495 pounds of explosives and can probably destroy a majority of this ship. We transport the weapons, we'll build up the weapons, we'll send them up to the flight deck, we'll receive more weapons, and we'll do any troubleshooting that might occur along the way.
Clear! Clear!
Up on deck, other red shirts load the bombs onto the waiting planes.
Dealing with the explosives on a day-to-day basis is, it's rough on the mind, knowing that you're building something that could possibly kill someone, but this is something that is defending what I believe in, and I am doing a job, and I am doing it to the best of my ability.
Every aspect of deck operation is supervised and coordinated by the air boss, who acts as this airport's air traffic controller.
It's clear to start them up for the 1300 go, folks. Let's kick this pig. All right. I own everything on the roof, the hangar bay. I've got all the airspace within 10 miles from the surface up as far as you want to go. That all belongs to me. Yeah. Cards on, the flight deck's not rolling this in person. Catwalks on the flight deck.
The activity on a flight deck is probably the most synchronized and choreographed operation in the world. You've got all sorts of different colors. You've got wands, particularly at nighttime. You've got a lot of hazards up there. You can't see very well, and you just got to follow the rules.
job on the deck is unique, but one aspect they all have in common is danger.
A lot of the stuff's dangerous around here. If you don't watch yourself, if you're not aware of your surroundings, anything can happen, resulting in the worst case death.
Accidents like this one are rare and represent only one of the many life-threatening situations for deck workers.
The flight deck crew, they have an extremely dangerous job. It's just amazing if you think about all the dangers that await them. They could be blown overboard by jet blasts. They could get sucked into an intake. They could get hit by a prop arc. There are helicopters up there turning.
July 29, 1967, the USS Forrestal. This massive deck fire was not the result of enemy fire, but of faulty wiring. An accidental surge of voltage ignited a rocket mounted under the wing of an aircraft. This started a chain reaction of missile and bomb detonation that blew 7 holes in the flight deck. The fire burned for 2 days, killing 134 crew members. It was the worst carrier accident in history. The Navy uses this accident as a training device, assuring that every crew member will take safety seriously.
Taking an 80,000-ton ship through the water, flying airplanes that land and take off at over 160 miles an hour, you got one shot to do it right, and they need to understand that.
For many crew members, the best way to stay alive is to stay alert.
Just keep your head on a swivel, always think safety before you do anything, and make sure you're not anywhere you're not supposed to be.
Life aboard these carriers is filled with peril. Crew members work long hours battling fatigue and stress and must perform their jobs with absolute perfection because the consequences of anything less can be catastrophic. Next, real-life Top Guns and how to make an aircraft carrier invisible. Fighter pilots hold one of the most prestigious positions in the entire Navy. They are trained to destroy enemy planes in aerial dogfights, bomb targets in foreign countries, and land and take off from a crowded floating runway. It's more than a dangerous job. 1 out of every 4 pilots will die while flying airplanes. Still, the Navy has no problem finding candidates.
There's something that's always going to attract people, even without the benefit of any advertising, to being able to fly a strike fighter off a ship 100 miles off hostile shore and, you know, be able to project power onto it. It's the greatest job in the world.
I will admit it is exciting. There's no doubt about it. And then now, even after we're married, every time I see he's in an airplane and watching him fly overhead, that's very exciting. And even those stupid flight suits are really, they're cute.
Even children learn to appreciate a job that puts their father's lives in danger.
I'm proud of my dad because he flies over the world, and he represents our country, and he helps the people in different places to help them when they are in trouble.
But before pilots are allowed to participate in a real bombing mission, they must first prove they can fly off a carrier, a skill that is taught at a naval training base like this one in Norfolk, Virginia. It's here that veteran pilots help develop the rookie pilots, or nuggets, into battle-ready aviators.
A rookie pilot, when they check into the squadron, we call them a nugget. And if I remember the lore correctly, it's because if you look at a work of art or a piece of jewelry or a precious stone, the works of art start out as an unshapen piece of gold called a nugget. And we wear wings of gold. So I get this young man in here, and we've got to shape him into a combat aviator.
It takes 4 years at a cost of nearly $6 million per pilot to train these young recruits.
The biggest secret to getting most the pilots that I'm leading is to give them airplanes and give them gas money and send them out there and let them fly. and let them go out and do it again, and let them make mistakes, let them push to the edge of the envelope, but never let them go beyond the edge of the envelope.
Before pilots get to push the envelope, they must first spend 3,000 hours in the classroom. The safest place to practice what they've learned is in this state-of-the-art flight simulator. The simulator can recreate any condition a pilot may face, including the real carrier landing Lieutenant Vincent will make in a few short days.
Roger ball, 25 knots, down deck, don't go low.
Wings are 20 auto, both lights out, wheels. I got 3 down locked, SAS is all on, flaps are full down, DLC is engaged, hook is down.
Roger ball. We try to practice landing on the boat because that's a very stressful environment, both day and night.
102, Tomcat ball, 8-8.
Right for lineup.
Hook is down, harness is locked, speed brakes are out, brakes check good, 9-0.
All right, 2-wire, nice pass.
The final test is landing and launching a real plane on this inland runway, which is specially designed to match a carrier runway's every detail.
Go, buddy.
There you go.
As the pilots finish preparation for a 6-month deployment, their families do the same.
All right. I literally internally start to panic. I don't think anybody else knows what's going on, but I start thinking about all the things that I'm going to be responsible for by myself. And I am always afraid, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do this and maintain my sanity and do everything well, do my job well, take care of the children well, make sure they're happy, because I'm thinking they're going to be so sad that he's leaving.
Good girl. That a way to go. I think to go out and look for another job that would allow me to be home a little bit more is not truly who I am. I love flying. I absolutely love it. I love the thrill of combat, the adrenaline rush. My family, I think, is stronger because I actually go away.
Got a beautiful day to go flying today. Probably one of the most beautiful airplanes in the world. Our airplane today is 70,000 pounds on the hook. We have about 66,000 pounds of thrust. We'll have missiles, a photo reconnaissance pod, and we're carrying about 20,000 pounds of fuel.
Before flying, pilots must hand check their planes to make sure there are no loose parts or hazards. Flying jet planes is not cheap. This routine flight will cost the United States government $2,000 in fuel alone, not to mention the $4,000 in maintenance costs. Next stop, the USS John F. Kennedy.
Thanks, Dave.
The final and most intense phase of a young pilot's training is a series of carrier launches and landings called carrier qualifications.
Most guys trip up there. If they're going to have a problem, most likely if they're going to have a problem that's going to disqualify them from carrier aviation, it's going to be carrier qualifying.
Lieutenant Smith, or Chunks as he is called, won't be alone with this challenge. His mentor is an experienced F-18 pilot, Jeffrey Chili Winter.
His training is something I take to a personal level, and if he were to fly with someone and not fly well, I would take that almost as a personal insult. So that's what drives me during the day, quite honestly.
When's the last time you flew, Chunks?
Last time I flew was the 11th, so 3 days ago.
Sounds pretty good.
To become a pilot, Chunks will need to execute 4 safe landings within 3 weeks.
The quickest way to lose your status as a pilot in the Navy is by not being able to land very good at the boat.
All right, man. We'll see you out there. All right. Good stuff.
When I'm walking up to the flight deck, we're just kind of checking everything, sort of a pre-flight, make sure everything looks good. The key, I think, is doing everything the same every time. It's very ritualistic, because if you do it the same every time, if it just becomes pure habit pattern, you won't forget it. If you can't do everything randomly, you're going to forget stuff.
All right, I'll see you on the rebound.
Yes, sir.
Today's mission will require Chunks to successfully take off, perform a tactical flight with his mentor Chili, and then land back on the carrier. Chunks carefully follows the elaborate hand signals of the aircraft handling officer, who guides the plane into the queue for takeoff. A blast shield is the only thing that protects Chunks' F-18 from the thrust of the plane taking off in front of him. Once the runway is clear, Chunks moves forward while the hook runner makes sure that the F-18 is properly locked into the catapult mechanism. Finally, with all systems go, Chunks removes his hands from the F-18 controls. The plane's onboard computer actually executes the launch automatically, with a pilot taking over only after the plane is safely airborne. A catapult launch carries the force of 5 Gs, almost twice that of an astronaut taking off in the space shuttle.
Strike 304 is up for checks. 304, sweet, cleared switch.
Chunks' current mission is to perform difficult tactical maneuvers with Chile, simulating combat.
Tactical flying is a team sport. It's like acrobatics in midair. They fly sometimes wingtip to wingtip, 2 feet apart. So there's an enormous amount of trust between pilots.
With the training maneuvers complete, it is now time to focus on landing the F-18 on a carrier that appears no larger than a speck.
There's 4 sets of arresting gear wires out there. They're spaced 40 feet apart. You're trying to put your hook point down between the second and the third one, so it's right in the middle of all 4.
When the 8-foot metal tail hook catches the cable, or spaghetti, the pilot still proceeds as if he hasn't caught the wire.
Every time you touch down the jet on the flight deck, you go to full power, regardless if you caught a wire or not. You just don't know. But in the case that you bolter, either because you missed the wires or your hook skips them, you still go to full power, because if you're not, you're going to wind up in the water after the landing area.
Missing the cables means the pilot has to attempt another landing, this time dealing with even more pressure.
Eventually, you could run out of gas. Now, there are measures that we have in place to prevent that from happening. We have recovery tankers airborne with gas, so if you get low on gas, you can simply go refuel and come back around.
Steely, is that fuel coming out of that tank? Yeah, it sure is. Okay. Let's go back.
The key to landing safely on a carrier is keeping the plane level with the deck and the nose centered on the runway. If the pilot fails here, the results can be tragic, as is demonstrated by this 1994 accident, recorded by naval video cameras.
Wave off, power, raise your gear, power. Eject, eject!
It is a dangerous job. Everyone knows that when they come into the business, and you lose friends. I've lost probably about a friend a year since I've been flying jets in the Navy. It's very sad, but I think whether we feel bulletproof or otherwise, most guys think, hey, it's not going to happen to me.
Back in the air, Chunks centers up and puts his training to the test. He completes the first of what will hopefully be many successful landings for a Nugget pilot who is well on his way to earning his gold wings. Next, how to find your way home in the dark, and love and loneliness on a carrier. The best time to make a military strike is during the dark cover of night. That means that the majority of carrier landings occur at the most dangerous time to fly.
Night landings are probably the hardest thing I've ever done, and certainly the scariest.
I really believe that anybody that tells you that he enjoys night landing on the boat, I think he's a liar, because it is very, very scary.
Every single time he does a night landing, his knees still shake. So there's always that feeling of, you know, if he's going to make it back.
Fear of landing on a carrier at night is nothing new. In Vietnam, pilots were actually studied to gauge the amount of stress they were feeling while landing at night.
We had some doctors who came aboard, and they wired the pilots up for their responses to being under attack and the operation and so forth. They found that their senses, pulse rate, breathing, and other things, were greatest on their night carrier landing approach, more so than when they were under fire over North Vietnam. That gives you some idea of the respect with which night carrier landings are held by the pilots.
Because there is little or no natural light, pilots have no point of reference or horizon. This can lead to disorientation.
You're squinting, you're looking, you're fighting lineup, you're fighting vertical, where your body is telling you that what's up is not really up, but your instruments are telling you what is correct.
You have to use your intuition, and you have to put your faith into the engineering, and you have to be ready to eject if something within a half a second indicates to you that it's gone horribly wrong.
Possibly the greatest challenge is the last 10 seconds when the pilot switches from reading instruments to looking at the ship itself.
At that point, you have to be very refined about what you do and very smooth, and a lot of your fears come out because you're actually looking out and you see what you think is the ship and you're trying to land on it.
Successfully touching down on the deck brings the relief of another safe landing and the welcome signs of life outside the plane's cockpit.
Night carrier landings are an obsession for carrier pilots. One pilot once said to me that getting out of his jet after flying at night is like having been in a sense deprivation tank.
Pilots often feel the need to cool down and reconnect after a night mission. Fortunately, they always have a place to go.
This is mid-rats. This is what we eat. Substance.
The ship has a fourth meal every night called Midnight Rations Mid-Rats, and pretty much everybody goes to that thing, and it's a great way after flying at night to go and unwind for a little while.
Well, Mid-Rats is a tradition after you've been flying at night and taking night traps. You'll come down here and get a slider, which is basically a cheeseburger, and you kind of sit back and you talk about what you've done during the evening.
In 1910, Wilbur Wright turned down an official request from the U.S. Navy to land an airplane on a ship at sea. Enter daredevil stunt pilot Eugene Ely, who took the challenge and successfully landed his Curtiss biplane on a ship, essentially creating the concept of an aircraft carrier.
Landing an aircraft on a ship is a tough thing to do anytime, but clearly if you were one of the first to do it, you had to be a very brave and adventuresome person. And I think you find that typically of pilots, but certainly in the olden days.
Aircraft carriers continue to develop and play a peripheral role in world affairs. But it wasn't until World War II that aircraft carriers took center stage and changed the course of history.
The Battle of Midway was a seminal battle for the United States Navy, and it's been looked upon as one of the really great and important battles of all sea battles since the recorded history of these.
6 months after the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, 3 U.S. carriers and their squadrons surprised the Japanese Navy near Midway Island in the Pacific Ocean. The U.S. Navy sunk 4 Japanese carriers, effectively signaling the end of Japan's dominance of the strategically important Pacific Ocean.
It was just the turning point of the war in the Pacific, but also the war worldwide. And when the Japanese were roundly defeated and they went home, it changed the whole equation for World War II.
Today, aircraft carriers are used more to exert pressure than to win wars.
If things start getting tense on the international arena and the United States, wants to put their foot forward for one reason or another, we're a great deterrent. And the first question probably the National Security Council is going to ask, and the Secretary of Defense and the President is, okay, if we got to get there quickly, where's the closest carrier and how long is it going to take to get there?
But national security does not come without a high price.
It's a ridiculous amount of money. I mean, picture burning 50 grand an hour. That's what a carrier costs to operate a year. That's not including the $6 billion just to buy the thing, get it floating.
To protect this enormous asset, carriers travel with a floating armada designed to deter would-be attackers.
Part of the reason why a carrier costs so much is because a carrier always floats around with its own battle group, and a lot of the battle group and a lot of the air wing is dedicated to protecting the carrier. That's the centerpiece.
Alone, the carrier is a vulnerable target, but combined with the battle group, it is a powerful offensive weapon, patrolling the world's seas and providing the United States with a mobile airfield. Next, surviving in the floating city. An aircraft carrier is a floating metropolis that contains nearly everything a city does. The captain serves as mayor, while a small group of Marines oversee the onboard jail and act as the ship's police force. There's a church, barbershop, health club, movie lounge, and even a television studio that provides a daily news program for crew members.
F-16s dropped laser-guided bombs and launched an anti-radar missile.
Crew members, especially new arrivals, have the daunting task of navigating a structure that includes 12 miles of hallway.
I would say the first feeling they get is, how am I going to get around this ship? It's so large. And they're trying to find places that are common so that they can get around in, and they need to check in at this place and this department, and oftentimes they find themselves a bit overwhelmed.
Oh my God. Once the first 6 months are over of maneuvering around the ship, it gets to be like cakewalking. You could do it in your sleep.
That is, if you don't mind sleeping with 250 other people in a room that allows no more than 40 square feet per person.
My living quarters is small, but it's cozy. It consists of a rack, a 6x3 rack, with all of my belongings crammed into its space.
We have a lot of females in our berthing. It's kind of packed, it's crowded. We sleep in a little rack, but it's not that bad. It's nice, actually.
Because space is such a precious commodity on board the carrier, there is no such thing as a luxury suite. But ranking officers do enjoy more space and amenities.
Welcome. Come on into our stateroom.
All pilots are officers, so their rooms are larger and on a different floor than the enlisted crew members. The stateroom is also equipped with a sink and personal workspaces.
We each have our own desk and these little compartments for all of our personal gear. And really what we do with the desk, you've been in the ready room, it's kind of busy in there and gets kind of crowded and cramped. It's a lot easier to come in here and do your work. Plus we've got a stereo set up and TVs and a refrigerator and things that make our life a little bit better.
Although pilots may be treated a little differently, that doesn't stop enlisted crew members from feeling a part of the mission.
Well, pilots have to eat too. When you come to the galley to eat, you get a well-balanced meal that gives them strength to fly that plane. And one way, we're keeping them up there. I still believe the MS we run, I think we make the ship run. We make it run.
An average of 15,600 meals are served each day on board the carrier.
We're cooking chicken tetrazzini for the crew on the John F. Kennedy.
Though the kitchen and other physical elements of the carrier have remained basically unchanged since the 1960s, there is one major difference: the addition of women. Before 1994, aircraft carriers were essentially an all-male fraternity. Now, on the USS John F. Kennedy, there are over 500 women working alongside 4,500 men.
To be a female among 4,500 males on the JFK is good because I love attention and I get a lot from a lot of guys.
Like any work environment, inter-office dating is unavoidable.
We really discourage it because, with any love situation, they're so young, it's so intense, and sometimes it's momentary, and then when it ends, it's also intense. So it breaks down a little bit of the morale.
Dating on the Kennedy is really not a big problem, especially where I work, but it does happen. As long as you don't bring your relationship to work, then it works.
Not bringing personal issues to work can be difficult since the work never stops. Every person on a carrier is a specialist at moving, at fixing, or even cleaning. But every crew member has one thing in common. They work 10 to 12 hours every day of the week, doing the same job over and over for months at a time.
It takes approximately 12 hours to process all the laundry because we get roughly about over 1,000 pounds of laundry a day. Temperature down here gets pretty hot, roughly between 95 to 105.
The hard living and working conditions can be very lonely for young recruits.
Me and my wife, we're trying to get started, you know, so I have to miss her for a little while, and so we have to make sacrifices. I have to stay out here for a little while, you know.
Everyone has their own way of dealing with the loneliness.
If I'm at work and I know I can't leave, I just take my ring and I twist it, you know. And I think about my wife and kids, and that gives me some temporary relief until I can get off work, and I'll go write a letter or look at my pictures. It lets me know why I'm out here. That helps me a lot.
It's a tough situation, but they're professionals, but they're also human, and they just feel sad sometimes.
Father Sal is one of 4 chaplains on board who run church services, coordinate outreach programs in foreign countries, and act as a friend and counselor to crew members.
How you doing?
Well, a chaplain's role on the carrier is varied. It varies from being a positive reinforcement for some of the troops who, you know, sometimes get down and just really get lonely. Also, just to go around the ship and just make sure people are well, make sure that they're talking, and almost like putting out fires before they even start.
Oh, Mr. Riley, I haven't seen you around. You gotta come see me, buddy. I'm coming out of the night. Yeah, right. Okay. I won't hold my breath. Oh, how y'all doing? Hey, buddy. All right.
I am constantly walking around talking to people because some of these young people can't get away or are working such long hours that they don't have the time to come by and see me, so I go to them. And I'll just come by and say, hey, how you doing? Are you okay? And you'd be surprised how sometimes they'll say, no, I'm not okay. And then I stop and I'll say, what's going on?
Thanks, Mom. Be careful, guys. Take care. Thank you, sir. Keep up the good work. Thank you, sir. Have a good day. How's your daughter doing?
She's doing really good.
Not surprisingly, loneliness knows no rank.
Loneliness never goes away as the captain of the ship. I've got nearly 30 years in the Navy. I've got 2 fine daughters, a great wife, and a Labrador Retriever at home that I miss a whole lot. And I would tell you it probably gets a little bit harder as you get older than when you're younger because you become more attached, you have more responsibilities, there's things that you're missing.
Staying in touch with loved ones is not nearly as difficult as it was in years past, now that carriers are connected to the internet.
Email has revolutionized how we can communicate with our spouses. There's no question about it. You can send a message every day, 24 hours a day, and they know what's going on in your daily life. You can know what's going on in their daily life, and it is just a completely different experience having them go away. The separation doesn't seem quite as distant.
Though life on an aircraft carrier can be lonely, the extreme conditions make for strong friendships.
Being so far away from my friends and my family, you tend to grow a second family on board ship because of the closeness, your tight spaces, your surroundings, the people you work with, they become trustworthy and become your second family.
There is even a gospel choir that practices twice a week in the ship's chapel. The ship's common spaces are filled with off-duty crew members talking, playing, and just relaxing.
It's like,
Some even find time to enjoy themselves on the job.
Come to move and come to mad and come, I stay with my kids and we do something.
I think the biggest misconception about life on an aircraft carrier is that quality of life is rugged and the work's no fun and we're a bunch of slave drivers out there, and it's not that way. People enjoy what they're doing. They're willing to put up with the cramped style if we make the reasonable good faith efforts to make it the best we can for them, to give them a return on their personal investment to come into the service and give them the opportunity to do something exciting, to do something to learn.
And for many, the return for their service is an experience that will never be replaced. Next, how to hide a 90,000-ton ship. aircraft carriers are not born, they're built. And they are built exclusively at Newport News Shipbuilding, a privately owned company that has been constructing carriers for the U.S. Navy since 1934.
To build a carrier, it's very much like putting a large three-dimensional puzzle together. We build the carrier in large modules, and they range in weight from 180 tons to 890 tons. As soon as the modules start coming together, we start outfitting them with lighting, electrical, machinery, piping, foundations, pumps, and major equipment.
Before completion, Newport News Shipbuilding will equip the carrier with over 2,000 telephones and 29,600 lights in the 2,700 rooms aboard. An onboard distillery will supply over 400,000 gallons of fresh water a day. One of the biggest concerns is making sure the 4 steam-driven catapults are capable of launching a 48,000-pound aircraft from 0 to 165 miles per hour in just 2 seconds.
We take orange sleds on wheels that range in weight from 15,000 pounds to 96,000 pounds. We lift them on the flight deck and we launch them off the ship into the James River, just like you would an airplane. And we're measuring the speed at which the dead load leaves the carrier to get all the critical data to ensure that when we go to launch planes for the first time, we have a successful launch.
One of the most significant technological advances for aircraft carriers was the switch from oil to nuclear power in the late 1960s.
The advantage of the nuclear carrier is in the 50-year life expectancy of the carrier, it gets refueled once in its lifetime. And all the fuel tanks on board can be used to support the air wing and the escort vessels that go along with the battle group.
The United States' newest carrier, the USS Ronald Reagan, will cost over $5 billion to construct. When it is completed, the United States will have a fleet of 14 supercarriers, which is 13 more than any other navy.
As to the question as to why other countries don't have carrier fleets, I think there are 2 real reasons. One is the expense. They're not cheap. And the other is they don't have the requirement to do so. The United States has global responsibilities as the world's only superpower, and it's necessary for us to have these.
The Navy is currently developing the new CVX-class carrier that will feature a greatly reduced island, primarily to help make the carrier undetectable to enemy radar.
The biggest thing that sticks out is this 1,000-foot island in the middle. We hope to impact the overall stealth of this carrier to where it compounds the capability of the enemy to find and impact the ship.
The other major advancement is replacing the steam catapults with an electromagnetic launching system.
They will function principally like the steam catapults, only be driven with an electronic pulse, which reduces the steam and maintenance of the old catapults, reducing manning and costs.
Although an aircraft carrier is a modern marvel of raw power, sheer size, and crafty engineering, its most distinguishing asset is still the people who make it work.
I think it's kind of a marvel of human cooperation to see 5,500 people in the middle of an anonymous ocean working together to perform this kind of technological miracle of landing and shooting planes off the bow.
I mean, it's all for the same goal, you know, parking a ship 100 miles off a hostile shore and projecting power onto it.
Well, I'm out here to defend my country. That's the #1 goal, and I have a family to support.
People in this business are genuinely enthusiastic and proud about what they're doing, and they enjoy going to work in the morning. And so to be able to associate with those kind of people and see the smile on their face when you do something challenging pretty well, that's good. They keep coming back, and I like that.
The time that Navy people spend aboard carriers is memorable. I don't know of anybody who doesn't remember their tours on board. I think the Navy probably has more reunions than any other service because they're always getting together and they always have this common bond, the ship. You remember these things and these memories just stay with you.
Danger, adventure, and camaraderie all combine to make life spent at sea an extraordinary experience in the secret world of aircraft carriers.
Coming up next on TLC, explore the largest of man's creations, the ultimate 10 biggest structures next. Then see jump jets tonight on TLC. And for more adventures online, go to discovery.com and click on TLC.
Thursday night on TLC, Commander-in-Chief of the strongest military force in the world, Nixon, Bush, Clinton. TLC gets inside the minds of the men in the Oval Office. Commander-in-Chief, 3 episodes, Thursday night beginning at 8.